The ancient records would later remember this night as one of Chu Feng's most effortless victories. The Avaricious Immortal's supposedly unbreakable formation shattered in an instant. His treasures changed hands, and his desperate confession dragged Xian Daofeng into disgrace. But beyond the feast and laughter, the Elf King revealed secrets far greater than any single duel. The mysterious outer world, Miaomiao's true origin, the deadly realm of gods, and the looming threat of the Dark Hall. With a new breakthrough in cultivation and 2 Blood Devouring Armors awaiting his refinement, Chu Feng's path is becoming more dangerous and far more extraordinary. Somewhere in an old wine house, the keeper has probably just finished pouring the last cup when a familiar traveler pushes open the door and brings yet another unbelievable tale from the jianghu. The fire is warm, the gossip is already flowing, and judging by the look on the old storyteller's face, someone is about to become very proud of themselves again. Come closer, fellow daoists. The road ahead has treasures, secrets, and enough trouble to fill 100 wine jars. Xian Miaomiao's heart tightened the moment she saw Princess Lingyu's expression change. The proud princess, who had always carried herself with calm judgment, now stared at the spirit formation with deep unease, as though she had seen an iron mountain blocking Chu Feng's path.
Big sister, what's wrong? Is that spirit formation really that difficult to break through?
It's difficult, extremely difficult. Although I am nowhere as proficient with world spirit techniques as Dragonmark Royal Cloak world spiritists, I can still tell how powerful that spirit formation is. Not to mention 1 hour. Even if someone were given 20 hours, they would not be able to break through it with world spirit techniques. That is simply an unbreakable spirit formation.
Those words struck Xian Miaomiao like cold thunder. Last night's competition had only been a contest of skill and face, but this match was different. If Chu Feng lost here, what awaited him was not humiliation, but death.
Ah, big sister, what do we do then? Think of a way.
This spirit formation is impossible to break through. It is simply impossible for Chu Feng to defeat the Avaricious Immortal by breaking it. The only path left is for him to set up a spirit formation that the Avaricious Immortal cannot break through, then force this match into a draw.
Can Chu Feng do that?
Xian Miaomiao turned toward Chu Feng. She trusted his battle power, trusted his courage, and trusted the miracles he had already created. But world spirit techniques were another battlefield entirely. One fought not with fists and blades, but with perception, structure, control, and hidden profundity.
With Chu Feng's strength, that should be possible. However, I fear that even if this matter ends in a draw, the Avaricious Immortal will not be willing to leave it there. He may continue insisting on another competition.
I will not give him that opportunity. If this match ends in a tie, I will immediately drive that Avaricious Immortal out of our elf kingdom.
Men.
Princess Lingyue nodded. Her thoughts were the same. If Chu Feng could force a draw, then the elf kingdom would have a reason to end the danger before the Avaricious Immortal could twist the rules again. At that moment, however, Chu Feng still stood motionless. The massive spirit formation loomed before him, vast and radiant, while the sands of time had already begun to fall. One of the Elf Kingdom's protectors could no longer restrain his anxiety.
Little friend Chu Feng, you should quickly get to work. After all, you only have 1 hour to break that formation.
Only then did the crowd realize that the Avaricious Immortal had already started measuring the time. Yet Chu Feng had not even raised his hand. He had not tested the formation, had not circled it, had not sent out a single strand of spirit power. It was as if the towering obstacle before him did not exist.
Haha. Did you give up because you know you cannot break the formation?
Wrong.
Chu Feng shook his head and slowly walked toward the Avaricious Immortal. His steps were calm, his expression unchanged, and his gaze carried neither panic nor hesitation.
This spirit formation of yours is something I can break through in a split second. Since that is the case, why should I be impatient?
The words fell like a sword drawn in silence. The Avaricious Immortal's face darkened at once. He had absolute confidence in this spirit formation. Even if he used it against his own senior brother, he would not fear defeat. Yet Chu Feng had just dismissed it as something that could be shattered in a blink.
What did you say? You are simply boasting shamelessly.
His fury surged because Chu Feng's confidence was not merely a challenge. It was an insult to the formation he trusted most. Even Miaomiao, Princess Lingyue, and the others were stunned. At such a life-and-death moment, Chu Feng did not rush to struggle against the formation. Instead, he stood there calmly, speaking as though victory had already been decided.
Boast shamelessly, haha. Then I shall let you see whether I am boasting or not.
The instant Chu Feng finished speaking, his hand suddenly rose. A strand of golden light shot from his palm, sharp and dazzling like a divine sword unsheathed from the void. It tore straight into that vast spirit formation. Boom! The moment the golden light pierced the formation, the grand, seemingly indestructible barrier collapsed. Countless rays of golden brilliance burst apart and scattered through the air, like a heavenly chain shattered into dust. The entire place fell into shock. The Avaricious Immortal froze. Xian Yuyan and his father were stunned. Xian Miaomiao, Princess Lingyue, and the others were equally speechless. A formation that had been judged impossible to break had vanished before their eyes in a single strike. Even the Elf King, the one person still able to remain calm, revealed a rare trace of surprise in his eyes.
Interesting.
Xian Miaomiao hurried to Chu Feng's side, excitement and disbelief shining in her eyes. Chu Feng had not merely survived the crisis. He had overturned everyone's expectations in the most direct and unbelievable way.
Chu Feng, you've broken through that spirit formation. But that spirit formation was clearly extremely difficult to break through. How did you manage to do it?
That's right, Chu Feng. How did you manage that? It is simply too unbelievable.
At that moment, almost every gaze gathered on Chu Feng. The crowd had already prepared themselves for the worst. To them, even forcing a draw would have been a miracle. No one had imagined that Chu Feng would destroy the Avaricious Immortal's formation with such ease. But Chu Feng did not answer immediately. His gaze moved past the crowd and landed on the Avaricious Immortal. The arrogant expert who had been so certain of victory now looked paper pale, almost like a corpse. His body trembled, and he shook his head again and again, unable to accept what had just happened.
Impossible. This is impossible. Impossible.
When the crowd followed Chu Feng's gaze and saw the Avaricious Immortal's current appearance, cold smiles appeared on their faces. Earlier he had been proud, mocking, and untouchable. Now he stood shaken to his core. The contrast was as clear as heaven and earth.
The spirit formation that the Avaricious Immortal set up earlier came from the ancient era. It is called the Spirit Techniques Blocking Chain Formation. As its name implies, its purpose is not to defend against attacks from martial power. It is specially used to guard against world spirit techniques. In other words, using world spirit techniques to break that formation is extremely difficult. Furthermore, when the Avaricious Immortal set up the formation, he used many Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones to strengthen its defensive power. That made the formation even harder to break, almost to the point of impossibility.
Chu Feng's explanation revealed the true danger of the match. The Avaricious Immortal had not relied on ordinary skill alone. He had chosen an ancient-era formation specifically designed to suppress world spirit techniques, then reinforced it with Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones. In a contest between world spiritists, this was like building a fortress against the exact weapon the opponent was forced to use.
If it was that hard, how did you manage to break it?
Before Chu Feng could answer, the Elf King himself spoke, drawing everyone's attention.
Allow me to explain this.
The crowd instantly turned toward the Elf King. His status was supreme, and his judgment carried the weight of a mountain.
Although the Avaricious Immortal's spirit formation is extremely rare, Little friend Chu Feng saw through it with a single glance. Thus, while the Avaricious Immortal was racking his brains to set up his formation, little friend Chu Feng was already setting up the formation needed to break through it. Furthermore, little friend Chu Feng's world spirit techniques are truly amazing. Before the Avaricious Immortal had even finished setting up his formation, little friend Chu Feng had already quietly completed his own formation and concealed it within his palm. That is why the scene earlier happened.
Only then did realization spread through the crowd. Earlier, everyone's attention had been fixed on the Avaricious Immortal and his grand formation. No one had noticed Chu Feng's silent movements. No one had imagined that from the moment the Avaricious Immortal began building his proud trump card, his defeat had already been planted in Chu Feng's palm. This was not a victory of brute force. It was a victory of recognition, timing, concealment, and formation theory. Chu Feng did not attack the formation after it was completed like an ordinary challenger. He identified its structure early, prepared the counter in advance, and waited for the exact moment to reveal it. That is why his calmness was not arrogance. It was control. So that's what happened. That's truly unimaginable. Yet Miaomiao still could not fully understand. The Avaricious Immortal's formation had been vast and imposing, filling the area with overwhelming pressure. Chu Feng's counter, by comparison, had been so quiet that no one even noticed it.
But the spirit formation that the Avaricious Immortal set up was so grand and vast. How could the spirit formation Chu Feng set up break through his while being so low profile?
Her question awakened the curiosity of the others as well. In their understanding, a powerful formation should be answered by another equally vast and grand formation. How could something hidden in a palm shatter a structure that seemed to cover heaven and earth?
Min, what Miaomiao said is correct. With such a powerful formation, even if one wished to break through it, one should need a very vast and grand spirit formation. How did little friend Chu Feng manage to stealthily conceal his formation in his palm?
The Elf King smiled faintly and looked at Chu Feng.
That is why I said little friend Chu Feng's world spirit techniques are truly amazing.
Chu Feng returned the smile. He knew very well that the formation he had set up was extremely ingenious. Without careful observation, it would be nearly impossible to discover. Yet the Elf King had seen through it, which meant that from the beginning, the Elf King had been paying close attention to him. This small exchange also revealed the Elf King's depth. While others were dazzled by the Avaricious Immortal's grand display, the Elf King had watched the quieter battlefield, the one hidden in Chu Feng's hand. In the world of experts, the loudest power is not always the most dangerous. Sometimes the decisive blade is the one nobody sees being drawn. The Avaricious Immortal suddenly shook his head again, his voice trembling with disbelief. The pride he had built over 100 years was collapsing faster than the formation itself.
Impossible. This spirit formation of mine originated from the ancient era. It is something I obtained from an ancient era's remnant. Even my senior brother might not necessarily be able to break apart my spirit formation. How could you possibly accomplish that?
Chu Feng faced the shaken, Avaricious Immortal with a beaming smile. There was no need for anger, no need for further mockery. The result itself had already answered everything.
I also believe that not many people know of that spirit formation. However, it is truly an unfortunate coincidence for you. I just so happen to be one of the few who know it. Furthermore, I just so happen to know the method to break through it, a method that even you do not know.
The Avaricious Immortal's expression turned even more dejected. He had spent an entire 100 years training to grasp the formation he had displayed today. He had prepared it precisely for contests against other world spiritists. Because he knew how to set it up but did not know how to break it, he had believed it to be unbreakable.
How could that be? You, with your young age, how could you possibly know that much? How could you possibly grasp such a powerful spirit formation?
And that was the true humiliation. The Avaricious Immortal had not merely lost a match, he had lost the foundation of his confidence. A secret formation he had cultivated for a century had been understood, countered, and destroyed by Chu Feng, a young man only in his 20s. For the crowd, this was a miracle. For the Avaricious Immortal, it was a nightmare. This chapter turns the entire pressure of the competition upside down. The formation called unbreakable becomes proof of Chu Feng's deeper inheritance and sharper perception. And if this is only what he reveals in a public match, one cannot help but wonder what even greater cards remain hidden beneath his calm smile. The contest had reached its most dangerous turn. The Avaricious Immortal had already watched Chu Feng tear apart his carefully constructed spirit formation, yet Chu Feng showed no trace of triumph or impatience. Instead, he regarded the old schemer with the calm confidence of someone who had already seen the ending.
Avaricious Immortal, there's no need for you to gasp in surprise just yet. Next, it's time for you to break my formation.
With those words, Chu Feng simply sat cross-legged in midair. He brought his hands together, closed his eyes, and became utterly still. The spectators immediately exchanged bewildered looks. They had expected dazzling spirit power, intersecting runes, perhaps even a grand formation covering the heavens. Instead, Chu Feng appeared to be doing nothing at all. 1 hour passed, then another. For 2 entire hours, Chu Feng remained motionless, so quiet that some people began wondering whether he had actually fallen asleep in the middle of a life-and-death competition. That silence was precisely what made the scene unsettling. A world spiritist normally displayed at least some outward sign while constructing a complicated formation. Chu Feng's complete stillness suggested either absurd carelessness or control so refined that the spectators could not even perceive what he was doing. At last, Chu Feng opened his eyes. A faint smile appeared on his face as he rose from his seated position.
Done.
Done? The crowd searched the surrounding space with their eyes. There was no towering barrier, no sea of runes, no obvious spirit formation whatsoever. Confusion spread through the spectators. Chu Feng had apparently spent 2 hours sitting there, yet now he claimed his work was finished. Some even wondered whether he intended to surrender the match without openly admitting it. But that possibility made little sense. Chu Feng and the Avaricious Immortal were enemies. Their wager concerned their lives. Chu Feng had no reason whatsoever to deliberately hand his opponent victory. Even the Avaricious Immortal could no longer understand what Chu Feng was planning. Although Chu Feng had broken his formation, he had not yet admitted complete defeat. According to the rules, he still possessed the chance to break Chu Feng's formation and reverse the situation. But where was the formation he was supposed to break?
Chu Feng, are you deliberately wasting my time?
Chu Feng remained perfectly composed.
Wasting time? No, it is time for you to attempt to break my spirit formation.
Chu Feng slowly separated the palms that had remained clasped together for 2 hours. Buzz. A brilliant golden radiance suddenly flickered between his hands. Within that light floated a tiny golden sphere, scarcely larger than a goose egg. Yet, despite its modest size, its brilliance resembled a miniature sun suspended before him. Miaomiao and the others stared at it in disbelief. Compared with the enormous formation previously created by the Avaricious Immortal, Chu Feng's formation appeared almost laughably small. Shan Yuyin, however, reacted differently. Moments earlier, Chu Feng's ability to break the Avaricious Immortal's formation had plunged him into despair. Although he still stood beneath the open sky, inwardly it had felt as though he were sinking into an abyss with no path back. Now, seeing that tiny golden sphere, hope returned to his eyes.
That is the spirit formation Chu Feng set up? Heh, Ridiculous. Although I do not know world spirit techniques, even I can tell that formation cannot withstand a single blow.
Xian Yuyin judged the formation by its appearance alone. Yet in the world of cultivation, size had never been the same thing as strength. A technique refined to its essence could be far more terrifying than one that announced its power with overwhelming spectacle. And there was one person present who understood that truth immediately. The Avaricious Immortal. The instant his eyes settled on the golden sphere, his entire body became rigid. His expression froze. The confidence that remained after his earlier defeat vanished without a trace. Chu Feng noticed every change upon his face.
Avaricious Immortal, what are you standing there for? Could it be that you are also able to break my spirit formation in an instant?
The smile on Chu Feng's face made the meaning obvious. He was mocking the Avaricious Immortal because he already knew the answer. Chu Feng's confidence was not empty arrogance. He understood the structure he had created better than anyone else. Even knowing its method of dissolution, Chu Feng himself would have found breaking it extremely difficult. For an outsider who possessed neither the method nor the insight, the challenge was vastly worse. Xian Yuyin began to grow anxious.
Avaricious Immortal, it's your turn.
He desperately wanted the Avaricious Immortal to win. Xian Yuyin had already lost to Chu Feng in talent. If the Avaricious Immortal now lost to Chu Feng in world spirit techniques as well, everything they had arranged for this day would collapse. Worse still, their scheme would have accomplished the exact opposite of its purpose. Instead of suppressing Chu Feng, they would have provided yet another stage upon which he could prove his frightening ability. Shan Miaomiao, Princess Lingyue, and several protectors immediately cast displeased glances toward Xian Yuyin. Practically everyone from the Elf Kingdom wanted Chu Feng to triumph. Their disgust toward the Avaricious Immortal was obvious. Yet Xian Yuyin alone openly urged that man onward. Without saying anything directly, Xian Yuyin was exposing where his interests truly lay. In a royal court filled with powerful observers, even a single impatient sentence could reveal alliances that careful people would normally prefer to hide. But Xian Yuyin no longer had the composure to care about their judgment. The Avaricious Immortal still had not moved, and every passing breath caused the unease inside him to grow.
Avaricious Immortal, what are you thinking about? Quickly, break that formation.
Then came the answer no one expected. The Avaricious Immortal suddenly dropped to his knees in midair.
Little friend Chu Feng, I've lost. I admit my defeat. Please spare my life. Please spare my life.
Shock swept through the crowd. The mighty Avaricious Immortal had not even attempted to touch the formation. He had simply looked at the tiny golden sphere and surrendered. To the spectators, the scene seemed incomprehensible. How could something so small drive an experienced world spiritist to kneel and beg for his life? Chu Feng alone remained unchanged. There was neither surprise nor excitement upon his face. This was exactly the response he had expected. The contrast could not have been sharper. The Avaricious Immortal's earlier formation had been grand enough to impress the eye, while Chu Feng's creation could fit within two hands. Yet the true contest was never about appearance. It was about complexity, control, and whether the opponent could find even the slightest weakness. Chu Feng looked down at the kneeling man without sympathy.
Avaricious Immortal, you are truly shameless. We agreed to bet our lives. You accepted that condition frankly back then. Furthermore, earlier, I gave you the authority to decide the rules for the competition. I have already yielded to you enough. Since you've been defeated, you should wholeheartedly accept it and honor your promise. Yet what is the meaning of your actions right now?
The Avaricious Immortal abandoned every trace of dignity that remained.
Little friend Chu Feng, I was truly in the wrong. Before I thought only about my own gains. I will never do such a thing again. These are all the possessions I have gathered throughout my lifetime. All my wealth is here. Little friend Chu Feng, please spare my life. Give me one chance to turn over a new leaf.
3 cosmos sacks appeared in his hands. Still kneeling, the Avaricious Immortal moved toward Chu Feng and presented them with an utterly submissive posture. Chu Feng did not refuse the offering. He took all 3 cosmos sacks and immediately examined their contents. Even he was surprised by what he discovered. Each of those 3 cosmos sacks contained hundreds of additional cosmos sacks. When counted together, there were 1,836 of them. And inside them lay a lifetime of accumulated wealth. Treasures of countless varieties filled those sacks. Among them were numerous natural oddities that Chu Feng himself could use. Unfortunately, the natural energies contained within those oddities were not abundant enough to provide much benefit to Chu Feng at his current level. Even so, those were far from the only valuable items. There were many other treasures, including numerous incomplete imperial armaments. The sheer quantity revealed something important about the Avaricious Immortal. His name was not merely reputation. He had spent years gathering wealth without restraint, placing profit above dignity and perhaps above everything else. Ironically, that lifetime of greed had now delivered an enormous fortune straight into Chu Feng's hands. There was a certain cruel symmetry to it. Treasures collected by sacrificing reputation were ultimately unable to purchase the one thing the Avaricious Immortal wanted most: his own survival. Chu Feng calmly stored the 3 cosmos sacks away. Accepting the wealth, however, did not mean accepting the plea.
These items are mine to begin with. After all, once you die, your possessions should naturally be mine.
Chu Feng had no intention of sparing him. In his eyes, someone as hateful and unscrupulous as the Avaricious Immortal would only create endless trouble if allowed to walk away. For Chu Feng, this was not merely vengeance. Leaving behind an enemy who had already demonstrated his willingness to manipulate life and death matters would mean accepting a future threat. In the martial world, mercy without judgment could easily become danger for oneself and for others. Realizing that treasure had failed to move Chu Feng, desperation finally shattered the Avaricious Immortal's last restraint.
Chu Feng, please spare me. I admit that I altered the Blood Devouring Armors, but I did all that because I was forced to. I did not want to do it.
Then his hand suddenly rose, pointing directly toward Shan Yun's father.
It was all because of him. He was the one who forced me to do that.
The situation changed in an instant. Shan Yun's father, Xian Daofeng, immediately panicked. Whatever he had expected from the Avaricious Immortal, he clearly had not expected the man to expose him in public, simply for the chance to remain alive.
Avaricious, what nonsense are you talking about?
But fear had already stripped the Avaricious Immortal of loyalty.
Xian Daofeng, don't you act dumb. It was clearly you who instructed me to do all this. I only did it because you agreed to give me benefits. You and your son are envious of little friend Chu Feng's talent, and you, for the sake of helping your son, decided to have me entrap little friend Feng. You are truly despicable and unworthy of being a protector of the Elf Kingdom.
And he did not stop with accusations. The Avaricious Immortal produced the jade pendant. Xian Daofeng had given him the previous night, and raised it where everyone could see. This was far more damaging than a desperate accusation. The jade pendant gave the crowd something tangible to connect with his claims. Whether every word that followed was accurate or embellished, Xian Daofeng could no longer dismiss the entire matter as empty slander so easily. The Avaricious Immortal swept his gaze across the gathered experts, determined to drag Xian Daofeng down, if that might buy him even the smallest chance of survival.
My lords, I am not lying. This is what Xian Daofeng gave me. He promised me that as long as I managed to take care of Chu Feng, he would bestow enormous benefits upon me tonight.
Once the confession began, the Avaricious Immortal showed no intention of protecting Xian Daofeng. He continued speaking, adding detail after detail and pushing responsibility away from himself and onto Xian Yuyan's father. Some of what he said might have been true. Some might have been exaggerated by a desperate man staring at death. But his purpose was unmistakable. If someone had to bear the blame, he intended for that person to be Xian Daofeng. And this may prove even more destructive than the spirit formation contest itself. Chu Feng had already defeated the Avaricious Immortal in skill. Now that defeat was beginning to tear open the conspiracy surrounding the Blood Devouring Armors. What began as an attempt to disgrace Chu Feng was turning into a public reckoning for the very people who had plotted against him. Xian Yuyan's father stood frozen in place, his face twisting beneath a storm of fury. His lips trembled. Yet for several breaths he could barely force out a coherent sentence.
You.
Never had he imagined that the Avaricious Immortal could be so shameless. The man had clearly approached him first. Yet now, before everyone present, he had twisted the entire matter around and dumped every trace of guilt onto Xian Yuyan's father. The humiliation, betrayal, and fury crashed together inside his chest. Suddenly, Xian Yuyan's father coughed violently and blood burst from his mouth. He had not been wounded by an enemy technique. He had not suffered backlash from cultivation. His rage alone had pushed him to the point of vomiting blood. That was how completely the Avaricious Immortal's betrayal had shattered his composure. Yet the Avaricious Immortal showed neither guilt nor fear. Seeing blood at the corner of the other man's mouth, he merely sneered and pressed the attack with words.
Still pretending? What an impressive performance. You may wear the face of a righteous man, but beneath it, you are the most treacherous one here.
Xian Yuyan's father nearly lost the last thread of restraint holding his fury in check.
Avaricious, you despicable bastard.
Regret now burned just as fiercely as anger. He cursed his own foolishness for allowing emotion to overwhelm him the previous night, for trusting the Avaricious Immortal enough to hand over that jade pendant. The jade pendant had become more than evidence. It was proof of a fatal mistake in judgment. Xian Yuyan's father had tried to use another man as a tool, only to discover that the tool was perfectly willing to sacrifice him the instant danger arrived. At last, restraint snapped.
I'll kill you.
His palm exploded forward. Martial power surged like a raging tide, carrying the might of a supreme expert directly toward the Avaricious Immortal. The Avaricious Immortal's expression changed instantly. His arrogance vanished, replaced by panic as death rushed toward him.
Your Majesty, save me!
But the Elf King did nothing. Neither did anyone else. Cold gazes watched the Avaricious Immortal without the slightest intention of interfering. That silence was already a verdict. Whatever laws or status might once have protected the Avaricious Immortal, he had exhausted the sympathy of every expert present. A muffled explosion followed. Xian Yuyan's father's palm struck true, and the Avaricious Immortal was killed on the spot. No one mourned him. Instead, relief appeared across the faces of those watching. To them, a man as treacherous as the Avaricious Immortal had brought this ending upon himself. Had he remained alive, he would only have continued causing calamity. Chu Feng, however, had noticed something else in that single palm strike. Rank 6 Martial Emperor. His earlier judgment had been correct. Xian Yuyan's father stood at the same cultivation level as Nanggong Longzhen. But Chu Feng was no longer the young man who would become helpless merely because a rank 6 Martial Emperor stood before him. Even if victory against such an expert was not guaranteed, Chu Feng now possessed the foundation to fight back. Killing him would no longer be a simple matter. That change alone showed how terrifyingly far his strength had advanced. More importantly, Chu Feng did not believe Xian Yuyan's father would attack him now. The man's schemes had already been exposed. His ally was dead. and his own position had collapsed. He had little room left to struggle. The Elf King finally turned his gaze toward Xian Yuyan's father.
How do you intend to explain this?
The rage slowly faded from Xian Yuyan's father's face. When he answered, there was no longer any attempt to deny what had happened.
There is nothing useful I can explain. This matter is indeed connected to me. However, Yuyin had nothing to do with it.
It was surrender, but it was also strategy. By admitting guilt himself, he could contain the damage. The Elf Kingdom was unlikely to execute a protector merely for offending an outsider like Chu Feng. More importantly, confession gave him a chance to separate Xian Yuyan from the scandal. Had he continued denying everything, the evidence and witnesses would only have made him look more shameless. Worse still, the ridicule directed at him would inevitably spread toward his son. The Elf King's expression remained severe.
You have deeply disappointed me. Your position as protector will be transferred to Xianlong. As for you, enter closed-door training and reflect upon what you have done. For the next 100 years, you are forbidden from leaving.
Xian Yuyan's father went rigid. 100 years of closed-door training sounded dignified. In reality, it was a century of confinement. The punishment struck at both power and freedom. Losing the protector position stripped him of status, while 100 years of isolation removed him from the political stage entirely. For an expert of his standing, this was far more severe than a symbolic reprimand. No one had expected the Elf King to punish him so heavily. Even Xian Miaomiao and Xian Lingyu were visibly surprised by the sentence. There was nothing more he could do. Xian Yuyan's father turned and departed. The Elf King did not send anyone to guard against his escape. He knew the man lacked the courage to defy the royal command. More importantly, Xian Yuyan remained inside the Elf Kingdom. For his son's sake, escape was never a realistic choice. And with that, the scheme that had begun in secrecy ended with one conspirator dead and another stripped of authority. Chu Feng had barely needed to retaliate personally. Once the truth surfaced, the enemies around him destroyed their own alliance. After the turmoil finally settled, the Elf King could not ignore another matter. Since Chu Feng had arrived in the Elf Kingdom, he had repeatedly suffered because of members of the ancient era's elves. Feeling responsible, the Elf King personally arranged a feast for Chu Feng. There were no ministers, protectors, princes, or princesses accompanying them. At the banquet sat only Chu Feng and the ruler of the ancient era's elves. For Chu Feng, such a private meeting was more valuable than an extravagant celebration. Before him sat one of the most powerful and knowledgeable figures in the Holy Land of martialism, and Chu Feng possessed questions that ordinary cultivators could never answer.
Your Majesty, would you be willing to tell me something about the ancient era?
Chu Feng had always yearned to understand that distant age. It represented a golden era of martial cultivation, an age wrapped in mystery and filled with powers far beyond the present world.
Little friend Chu Feng, you are far from the first person to ask me that question. Unfortunately, it is one I truly cannot answer. The ancient era lies too far in the past. Although our ancient era's elves have existed since that age, we possess neither memories nor surviving information capable of telling us what truly happened then.
So even the ancient era's elves do not know. It seems that era truly is a mystery.
Indeed, but every mystery has a day when its veil is lifted.
That answer carried a quiet significance. The ancient era was not being treated as a dead legend, but as an unanswered question. In a world where ancient inheritances, relics, and impossible powers continued to emerge, the past might not be nearly as buried as people believed. Chu Feng's curiosity only deepened.
Your Majesty, do you believe all the experts from the ancient era truly died?
The Elf King slowly shook his head.
Not necessarily. The path of martial cultivation has no visible end. Here we may appear capable of commanding winds and rains, but whenever I raise my head toward the night sky, I feel like someone standing at the bottom of a well, staring upward. Because I know that beyond that vast sky, greater martial cultivators must exist, experts whose power completely exceeds what we can presently imagine. If beings of that level could be called gods, then compared with them, people like us would still be nothing more than mortals. Consider this. Through various means, even mortals like us can survive for 10,000 years. If those greater beings truly stand at a godlike level, why should living for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years be impossible?
Chu Feng listened in silence, and his respect for the Elf King rose sharply. The Elf King's strength was impressive, but his vision was even more remarkable. He did not mistake dominance within the holy land of martialism for dominance beneath the heavens. He understood that the greater one's cultivation became, the more clearly one should recognize how enormous the unknown truly was.
Your Majesty, are you saying that even greater martial cultivators exist in the outer world?
Chu Feng phrased the question carefully, probing the Elf King's understanding of the world beyond the holy land of martialism.
I do not merely believe so, I am certain of it, and there must be many of them. If the world surrounding us is the boundless starry sky, then the place occupied by our holy land of martialism within that vastness would be.
The Elf King extended one finger before Chu Feng. Chu Feng focused his gaze. Resting upon that finger was a single tiny speck of dust.
Dust?
Exactly. Compared with the endless starry sky, our entire holy land of martialism would amount to no more than this speck of dust.
One speck of dust. That comparison shattered the illusion of grandeur surrounding the holy land of martialism. The countless sects, imperial clans, hidden experts, and legendary inheritances that seemed enormous to its inhabitants might occupy only an insignificant corner of a far greater martial universe. And for Chu Feng, a man whose path had never stopped expanding, those words sounded less like a warning than an invitation. If the Holy Land was merely dust, then how terrifying would the true heavens beyond it be?
Your Majesty truly possesses extraordinary vision.
The Elf King looked at Chu Feng for a moment before changing the subject.
Little friend Chu Feng, do you know that when I look at you, you remind me of someone?
Who?
Chu Feng's expression immediately changed.
Qing Xuantian.
Yes, Qing Xuantian. I saw him with my own eyes when I was still a child.
The revelation immediately changed the atmosphere of the conversation. The Elf King was no longer discussing distant theories. He was speaking about a legendary figure he had personally witnessed.
I was only 10 years old then. Because my talent was considered quite good, I began cultivating earlier than most children. At that age, martial cultivation filled me with endless expectation, and above everyone else, there was one person I admired. The Elf King of that generation. Among our ancient era's elves, he was regarded as the strongest elf king our race had ever produced.
The strongest?
Yes, the strongest.
Then the Elf King delivered the part that even Chu Feng had not expected.
And yet, your human race's Qing Xuantian defeated him. Qing Xuantian defeated the strongest elf king in the history of the ancient era's elves. He defeated the existence whom our race had once regarded as an omnipotent god.
The significance of that defeat went far beyond one battle. The strongest symbol of the ancient era's elves had fallen to a human cultivator, to a proud race that had placed its king upon an unreachable altar. Qing Xuantian had proved that their supposed god could bleed, lose, and be surpassed.
At that time, almost our entire race was shaken to its foundation. It felt as though we had been thrown down from the altar of gods and forced to stand among ordinary mortals. In a single moment, many seemed to lose the conviction they had carried all their lives. Confusion spread everywhere.
The Elf King paused, his gaze settling upon Chu Feng with unusual depth.
But I was different. I was the only one who did not fall into that bewilderment.
That childhood moment may have shaped the Elf King standing before Chu Feng today. Where others saw humiliation, perhaps he saw proof that martial cultivation had no fixed summit, no race with eternal supremacy, and no so-called god who could never be surpassed. And now, countless years later, he was looking at Chu Feng and remembering Qing Xuanten. Whether that comparison would become praise, warning, or prophecy remained unanswered. But for Chu Feng, there could hardly be a more extraordinary name to be compared with.
Do you know why?
The feast had already stretched deep into the night. Yet one question still lingered in Chu Feng's heart. The Elf King had spoken of Qing Xuanten with a respect that seemed far greater than ordinary admiration.
Why?
Because from that day onward, the person I admired most became Qing Xuantian.
Chu Feng could not hide his surprise. Before him sat the reigning king of the ancient era's elves, the publicly acknowledged #1 expert of the Holy Land of martialism. Yet this proud ruler openly called a human cultivator his idol. That single admission revealed more about Qing Xuantian than any legend could. To make someone standing at the summit willingly acknowledge inferiority required more than cultivation alone. It required strength overwhelming enough to crush pride and deeds magnificent enough to turn defeat into admiration.
Qing Xuantian was the overlord of an entire era. In my eyes, he is the only person truly worthy of that title. He saved the Holy Land of martialism, and he saved our ancient era's elves as well. He was the benefactor of countless lives. No matter how many generations pass, that grace should never be forgotten.
Yet the history between Qing Xuantian and the ancient era's elves had never been simple. Long ago, the Elf King of that generation had lost to Qing Xuantian. According to the agreement established before their confrontation, the ancient era's elves were then required to share many of their ancient era's immortal pawns with the other races. For a race accustomed to standing above others, such a result was difficult to swallow. Many elves therefore developed deep resentment toward the human who had forced them to yield.
But not every clansman hated him. Some among us believed Qing Xuantian had acted fairly. At that time, our ancient era's elves truly were excessively arrogant in many matters. That division created an unusual relationship. Some respected him, others despised him, and so our race became both friend and opponent to Qing Xuantian.
The Elf King's gaze settled firmly on Chu Feng.
And now, little friend Chu Feng, I can see Qing Xuantian's shadow in you, but I do not wish for history to repeat itself between us. I have no desire to become both your friend and your enemy. I wish only to be your friend.
Those words carried the weight of a ruler's judgment. The Elf King was not merely praising Chu Feng's talent. He was recognizing the possibility that Chu Feng might one day become another existence capable of changing the balance of the entire Holy Land of martialism. Choosing friendship now was therefore sincerity, gratitude, and wisdom all at once. Chu Feng raised his cup without hesitation.
Your Majesty's thoughts are exactly the same as mine.
The Elf King smiled and raised his own cup. The two drank together, sealing that understanding not with contracts or oaths, but with wine. But after emptying the small cup, the Elf King looked distinctly unsatisfied.
This cup is too small. Drinking like this has no spirit. Let us use larger bowls.
Chu Feng went one step further. He reached directly for a wine jug.
Why bother with bowls? Let's drink straight from the jugs.
Haha, exactly. Good, then from the jugs it is.
The atmosphere immediately became less restrained. One jug followed another beneath the night sky. Even powerful martial cultivators could be intoxicated, for the wines of the cultivation world were themselves extraordinary and far removed from ordinary mortal liquor. Yet after several tens of jugs, neither man collapsed. Chu Feng's resistance was hardly surprising. His body was immune even to poisons. If toxins capable of taking lives could not make him lose consciousness, ordinary intoxication had little chance of doing so. The Elf King was different. He displayed no special immunity. Instead, he seemed to possess an astonishing natural capacity for liquor. His face gradually reddened, and his speech became increasingly open. Yet his mind remained clear. For Chu Feng, that slight influence of alcohol was valuable. The distance between sovereign and guest was fading, and the Elf King was beginning to speak not as the ruler of an ancient race, but as a man carrying secrets and regrets. After another round of wine, the Elf King's expression grew more serious.
Little friend Chu Feng, I know that I will never reach the outer world, but you will certainly go there one day. If that day comes, could you help me search for someone?
Chu Feng's expression immediately changed.
Search for someone who?
Miaomiao's mother.
A sharp light flashed through Chu Feng's eyes. Miaomiao's mother. Those few words immediately told him that the story hidden behind the Elf King's request was anything but ordinary. Chu Feng did not rush to interrupt. Since the Elf King had already opened this forbidden door, he knew the king intended to reveal what lay behind it.
Do you know why I'm so certain that martial cultivators exist beyond this world? It is because Miaomiao's mother came from the outer world.
The revelation struck Chu Feng with unexpected force.
Then Princess Miaomiao and Princess Lingyue have different mothers?
That is what everyone would believe after hearing this, but no. The truth is more complicated. Until tonight, only Lingyue's mother and I knew this secret. Now, you know it as well.
The importance of that confession could not be ignored. A secret known only to the Elf King and his wife had now been entrusted to Chu Feng. Whatever political distance once existed between them had effectively vanished. Chu Feng could no longer suppress his curiosity. More importantly, this concerned the outer world, the very destination toward which his own path would eventually lead.
Your Majesty, what exactly happened?
The Elf King no longer concealed anything. He began recounting events from many years before. At that time, Princess Lingyue's mother had become pregnant with the Elf King's child. But only a month into the pregnancy, something went terribly wrong. The unborn child became extremely unstable, and the possibility of losing it grew frighteningly high. The Grand Elders of the Elf Kingdom advised their king not to force destiny. Their reasoning was cold but practical. If a child was already so weak before birth, then even if it survived, its future achievements might be severely limited. But the Elf King refused to abandon his child. Here, the mighty ruler's choice had nothing to do with status, bloodline potential, or the calculations of a royal clan. He acted simply as a father. Even if the entire kingdom considered the struggle pointless, he was determined to fight for that unborn life. He sought out several of the strongest world spiritists in the Holy Land of Martialism, hoping their techniques might stabilize the pregnancy. And when a medicinal herb was needed, he personally entered the most infamous forbidden region in the entire Holy Land, the realm of gods.
The realm of gods? Your Majesty actually entered the realm of gods?
Chu Feng's surprise deepened. The realm of gods had always been surrounded by terrifying rumors, and it was also a place he himself had long wanted to investigate.
But isn't the realm of gods said to be impossible to enter safely? They say those who enter are almost certain to die, and even survivors cannot live beyond a month. Were those rumors wrong?
No, the rumors are true. There is a special pathogen within the realm of gods, and everyone who enters will be infected. Anyone below the Martial Emperor realm will certainly die once infected. Martial Emperors and those above that level can still be treated, but the treatment requires a Dragon Mark Royal Cloak World Spiritist.
That explanation transformed the realm of gods from a place of absolute death into a forbidden region with a terrifying threshold. Strength alone was insufficient. Survival demanded both Martial Emperor cultivation and world spirit techniques of the highest level available in the Holy Land.
So that was the reason. What happened after you entered?
The Elf King's gaze became distant, as though the night before him had transformed into a window looking back across the years.
I never found the medicinal herb, but inside that place I encountered the most unforgettable person of my entire life.
Princess Miaomiao's biological mother.
The Elf King did not explain every detail of what had happened between them. He merely said that the matter was complicated, and that some parts were better passed over.
In the end, she became pregnant with my child, but she refused to remain in this world. Using her own abilities, she transferred the unborn child from her body into my wife's womb. She was also the one who gave that child her name. That child was Miaomiao.
Everything suddenly connected in Chu Feng's mind. Miaomiao's extraordinary talent had always seemed excessive, even among the ancient era's elves. Now, at least part of that mystery possessed an explanation. Her birth was tied directly to someone who had descended from beyond the holy land of martialism. Miaomiao's talent was no longer merely the brilliance of an elven princess. Her existence itself had become evidence that the boundaries of this world were far smaller than the martial path beyond them.
How did you know she truly came from the outer world?
She told me herself, and her strength was beyond anything I could imagine. When she decided to leave, I had absolutely no ability to stop her.
A trace of helplessness appeared on the Elf King's face as he spoke. Chu Feng was stunned again. The man sitting across from him was the strongest publicly recognized expert of the Holy Land of martialism. For someone to leave him completely powerless meant her level had surpassed the standards of this land by a frightening distance. If one cultivator from the outer world could make the Holy Land's #1 expert feel unable even to interfere, then the wider martial world might operate on an entirely different scale of power. For Chu Feng, that possibility was not discouraging. It was an invitation. The mysterious realm beyond the heavens suddenly seemed even more distant, more dangerous, and more irresistible.
In short, Miaomiao does not truly belong here. Her path belongs to the outer world.
The Elf King looked directly at Chu Feng.
And if my judgment is correct, you are the same. The strength you possess is not something that should belong to the Holy Land of martialism.
Chu Feng smiled quietly. For an instant he considered revealing the truth of his own origin. After all, the Elf King had just entrusted him with one of the deepest secrets of the royal family. Such trust deserved trust in return. But before Chu Feng could speak, the Elf King stopped him.
Chu Feng, your origin is your own secret. You do not need to tell me. I am not curious about where you came from. I only know that you are not a creature meant to remain inside this small pond. Sooner or later, you will soar into the outer world. Miaomiao is the same.
It was perhaps the highest form of trust the Elf King could offer. He did not demand Chu Feng's secrets as payment for his own confession. He recognized that every cultivator carried truths that belonged only to themselves.
I have never set foot in the outer world, but I can imagine that it must be dangerous. When Miaomiao eventually goes there, I hope you can look after her for me. And when the two of you enter that world, help her search for her mother.
Behind those words stood neither the command of a sovereign, nor the demand of the Holy Land's strongest man. It was the request of a father who knew that one day his daughter would walk into a realm beyond his reach. And for the first time, Chu Feng's future journey into the outer world was no longer connected only to his own destiny. Miaomiao's hidden bloodline, her missing mother, and the Elf King's trust had now become threads leading toward that same unknown horizon.
Princess Miaomiao still doesn't know any of this?
Not yet, but sooner or later she will learn the truth.
Chu Feng's thoughts immediately moved to the most practical question of all. The outer world might be his inevitable destination, but knowing that such a place existed and knowing how to reach it were two completely different matters. The conversation had begun with Qingxuantian, shifted into the secret of Miaomiao's birth, and now arrived at the question capable of changing Chu Feng's entire future. If the Elf King possessed even a clue, then the road beyond the Holy Land of Martialism might finally be beginning to reveal itself.
Then, Your Majesty, do you know how one can enter the outer world?
The conversation beneath the shadow of the ancient era's elves had already reached beyond ordinary cultivation. Chu Feng had asked about the mysterious outer world, yet even the Elf King could not provide a certain path.
I am also uncertain how one enters the outer world. However, I do not believe the key lies in cultivation. I suspect it is connected to the realm of gods.
Those three words immediately stirred Chu Feng's attention. Realm of gods. If the road toward the wider world truly passed through that forbidden place, then sooner or later he would have to face it.
The realm of gods? Then it seems I will have to make a trip there.
The Elf King stopped him immediately.
Chu Feng, you should not attempt to enter that place yet.
Why?
Its dangers surpass what you can presently imagine. I know how powerful you are, but this is not a place you should challenge recklessly. When the proper opportunity comes, I will accompany you myself.
That warning carried unusual weight. The Elf King had witnessed Chu Feng's talent and still urged restraint. This meant the threat of the realm of gods could not be measured simply by martial emperor cultivation. For Chu Feng, whose greatest strength was often his willingness to challenge impossible odds, choosing patience here was itself a form of wisdom.
Then I will have to trouble Your Majesty when that day arrives.
Yet the Elf King had not finished. Another danger was already moving through the Holy Land of Martialism, one far more immediate than the distant realm of gods.
There is something else you must remember.
What is it?
You must be careful of the Dark Hall.
Chu Feng's expression sharpened. The name Dark Hall was already tied to too many hidden schemes, yet its true foundation remained shrouded in darkness.
Dark Hall? Your Majesty, do you know what kind of organization it truly is?
I do not know who founded it, but I am certain of one thing. The Dark Hall is extremely dangerous. Many experts of the Holy Land of Martialism have already entered its ranks. One of them is the Yin-Yang Immortal.
The name was famous even to Chu Feng. He did not know the Yin-Yang Immortal personally, but he knew the man's reputation. In strength, this mysterious expert stood above figures such as the Snow-Haired Immortal and even the Compass Immortal.
Yin-Yang Immortal.
The Elf King then brought up another familiar figure.
Little friend Chu Feng, you still remember the Snow-Haired Immortal, do you not?
Of course, the Snow-Haired Immortal is my benefactor.
The Elf King was slightly amused by that answer. Snow-Haired Immortal had indeed saved Chu Feng, but she had also once cast him into the extremely poisonous Sea of Clouds.
You truly remember kindness shown to you. She helped you, certainly, but she also caused you suffering. She told me herself that she once threw you into the extremely poisonous Sea of Clouds.
Your Majesty knows the Snow-Haired Immortal?
Her temperament is reclusive, and she has very few friends. I happen to be one of them.
That connection allowed the Elf King to reveal something Chu Feng had never known. The true reason Snow-Haired Immortal had suddenly withdrawn when Chu Feng was facing one of his greatest disasters.
Do you know why, at the moment when the four great imperial clans threatened you most, the snow-haired immortal suddenly announced that she would no longer interfere? The yin-yang immortal intervened.
Chu Feng frowned, but he was not completely shocked. The Dark Hall had already been assisting the four great imperial clans from the shadows. What he lacked was the connection between their schemes and the Snow-Haired Immortal.
Does the yin-yang immortal share some particularly close relationship with her?
Not particularly close, but when the snow-haired immortal was young, the yin-yang immortal once helped her because she owed him that favor. There were requests she could not easily refuse. She was also the one who told me that the yin-yang immortal had joined the Dark Hall. In fact, he personally invited her to join as well, but she refused.
Then came the final piece.
If my judgment is correct, the rank 6 martial emperor who appeared at the Ximen imperial clan that day was most likely the yin-yang immortal.
At once, fragments of that battle aligned inside Chu Feng's mind. Baili Xuankong and the others had been restrained by extraordinarily powerful spirit formations. Even Chu Feng had been unable to dismantle those formations quickly. Back then, he had already concluded that a formidable Dragon Mark Royal Cloak World Spiritist was secretly supporting the four great imperial clans. Now the identity of that hidden expert finally had an answer.
So that explains it.
The significance was greater than merely identifying one enemy. A rank 6 martial emperor and powerful Dragon Mark Royal Cloak World Spiritist had willingly joined the Dark Hall. That meant the organization possessed either terrifying strength, terrifying resources, or an ambition convincing enough to attract experts who normally stood at the summit of the Holy Land of martialism.
And the yin-yang immortal is only one example. There are many other experts throughout the Holy Land of martialism. I suspect a significant number of them have already entered the Dark Hall. The problem is that I still do not know their identities. We stand in the open while they hide in darkness. Once the Dark Hall begins a large-scale operation, its members will inevitably be exposed. But by then, I fear the entire Holy Land may be caught unprepared.
Chu Feng understood that fear. The Dark Hall had never concealed its ultimate ambition forever. Its people had once declared their desire to dominate the Holy Land of martialism.
The Dark Hall has said that it intends to rule the Holy Land of martialism. Such conquest cannot happen without war, and war cannot happen without bloodshed. Judging from how they act, they may drag the entire Holy Land into catastrophe.
The Elf King immediately noticed something in Chu Feng's words.
You seem to know quite a bit about the Dark Hall. Have you encountered something else connected to them?
The Dark Hall once invited experts of the World Spiritist Alliance to join them. When the Alliance refused, they sent people to wipe it out. Fortunately, I arrived in time. Otherwise, the World Spiritist Alliance would likely have faced disaster.
Then what is the condition of the World Spiritist Alliance now?
They should be safe.
The Elf King's concern eased, but only slightly. One detail remained disturbing. The Dark Hall was specifically recruiting World Spiritists.
That is good. Their repeated attempts to gather World Spiritists suggest that they are planning something. I have already ordered my people to search for the Dark Hall's headquarters. Since they are a hidden danger, I intend to eliminate that danger as soon as possible.
Your Majesty intends to wage war against the Dark Hall?
You said it yourself. War brings bloodshed, and a war for dominion over the entire Holy Land of martialism would bring bloodshed beyond measure. We, Ancient Era's elves, are also inhabitants of this Holy Land. Therefore, I believe we have a responsibility to prevent such a war.
Those words changed Chu Feng's opinion of the Elf King even further. The ancient era's elves were famous for their pride. Their arrogance was not merely a rumor. They possessed the strength and heritage to look down upon countless powers of the present era. Yet the Elf King was different. Standing at the sum of such a proud race, he was still willing to consider the lives of ordinary people throughout the Holy Land.
Your Majesty possesses true righteousness, to think not merely of your own people, but of all living beings in the Holy Land of martialism. Having a ruler such as you is truly this land's good fortune.
Chu Feng was not flattering him. He meant every word. From Chu Feng's perspective, the balance of power was becoming frighteningly clear. The Dark Hall could recruit someone like the Yin-Yang Immortal, meaning its strength was likely no weaker than the three palaces, and might even surpass them. Against an enemy hidden this deeply, ordinary alliances would not be enough. Among all forces in the Holy Land of martialism, the ancient era's elves appeared to be the one power capable of truly suppressing the Dark Hall. Chu Feng even suspected that this was the real reason the Dark Hall had not yet launched its full conquest. They were not holding back because they feared the three palaces, the four great imperial clans, the 9 powers, or the monstrous beast races. The obstacle they truly feared may have been the ancient era's elves. The Elf King, however, did not accept Chu Feng's praise so easily.
Little friend Chu Feng, you praise me too highly. Even I cannot say with certainty whether I am capable of carrying the burden of protecting the Holy Land of martialism as Senior Qing Shuangtian once did.
Then his tone changed.
But you, on the other hand, will have to shoulder a heavy responsibility.
Chu Feng became serious.
What responsibility?
The Elf King smiled.
Take good care of my Miaomiao.
Chu Feng could not help smiling as well. Yet, when he clasped his fist, his response was completely serious.
Definitely.
After a conversation involving the outer world, the realm of gods, the Dark Hall, and the fate of the Holy Land itself, this simple request carried a different warmth. It revealed that the Elf King was not speaking only as a supreme ruler. For that brief moment, he was also speaking as someone entrusting a person precious to him into Chu Feng's care. Afterward, Chu Feng departed and returned toward the Purple Flames Black Mountain. He did not leave empty-handed. 2 Blood Devouring Armors traveled with him. The Avaricious Immortal had altered those 2 armors, so Chu Feng first needed to correct the changes that had been made to them. But Chu Feng's intentions went further. Although the Blood Devouring Armors had originally been created by the immeasurable Immortal, Chu Feng still considered them imperfect. He intended to refine them properly, repairing their flaws and pushing them as close to perfection as his own world spirit techniques allowed. This was another sign of how far Chu Feng's world spiritist ability had advanced. He was no longer merely using treasures made by famous immortals. He had reached the point where he could examine their creations, identify shortcomings, and consider improving them himself. That change in perspective was every bit as important as a cultivation breakthrough. Such work could not be completed instantly, so Chu Feng brought both Blood Devouring Armors back with him. Before separating from Miaomiao, he arranged for them to meet later at the southeastern entrance of the Blood Devouring Killing Formation. When Chu Feng finally returned to the Purple Flames Black Mountain, he found that everything remained peaceful. That was not unexpected. The Compass Immortal was one of the renowned 10 immortals. With such an expert present, Nangong Longjin's situation naturally remained stable. But the moment Nangong Longjin, the Compass Immortal, and the others laid eyes on Chu Feng, their calm vanished. Chu Feng had made no attempt to conceal his cultivation, and so they sensed it immediately. Chu Feng had become a martial emperor.
Chu Feng, your cultivation.
The shock was understandable. The martial emperor realm represented an enormous divide. yet Chu Feng had crossed it with terrifying speed. Chu Feng merely smiled.
I happened to encounter a fortunate opportunity and broke through.
The Compass Immortal could only stare at him in admiration.
Boy, you truly are a demon-level character. Your speed of breakthrough is simply godlike.
The old expert sighed repeatedly before laughing at his own former ambition.
It seems this old man will never have the chance to take you as a disciple. You are far too monstrous. Even if you asked me to become your master now, I would hardly dare accept.
In truth, the Compass Immortal had already abandoned the thought of taking Chu Feng as his disciple, after learning that Chu Feng had obtained every spirit formation contained within the 9 Spirits Divine diagram. The relationship between them had quietly changed. The Compass Immortal had once viewed Chu Feng as a junior whose talent might be guided. Now he was looking at someone whose growth had already exceeded the boundaries of conventional teaching. When a senior expert begins wondering whether he is even qualified to become the younger generation's master, the meaning is obvious. Chu Feng's rise is no longer merely impressive. It is abnormal, even by the standards of geniuses. Chu Feng naturally answered with humility, though a trace of amusement remained on his face.
Senior, you flatter me too much. If you keep speaking like this, I really might become conceited.
Before the Compass Immortal could respond, Bai Xuan cut in without hesitation.
Then be conceited. You have the qualifications to be conceited.
Even Nanggong Longjin, a man who rarely wasted words, gave a firm nod.
Indeed.
Surrounded by such unanimous praise, even Chu Feng could no longer maintain his composed expression. A foolishly pleased smile slowly spread across his face. And perhaps, this time, a little conceit truly was justified. Chu Feng had stepped into the martial emperor realm, possessed world spirit techniques that shocked renowned immortals, survived enemies far beyond ordinary juniors, and was now being treated seriously by figures standing near the peak of the holy land of martialism. Yet the road ahead had only become more dangerous. The realm of gods still waited. The dark hall continued gathering strength. And the higher Chu Feng climbed, the greater the enemies capable of seeing him as a genuine threat would become. For now, however, there was no need to suppress that smile. If anyone in the younger generation had earned the means to become conceited, Chu Feng had certainly begun to prove that he was one of them.